Coming out in just a few days is Venom. So the question comes to mind, who is Venom in the comics? So I brought my friend Andy along to help answer some of my questions. So let's talk about it. Hi, if you're new here, my name is SeanChandler.
And I'm Andy.
And I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me, except Andy, crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate to that you like to talk about movies more than the people around you, you're probably in the right place. And with that in mind, we're talking about Venom. And while I'm familiar with the character Venom, you actually know the comic book, so I brought you along to answer some of those questions so we can dig a little bit deeper going into this movie. So the first question, who is Venom?
Well, kind of a common comic book cliche is that which one are you asking about? Because the original Venom is kind of Spider-Man.
Okay.
So he got taken over by this alien suit.
And that's why Tobey Maguire started to dance in the streets.
Yeah, so, Spider-Man gets taken over, then ends up actually tearing it off of him.
Okay.
Because it's very aggressive, and handing it off, in essence, to Eddie Brock. And when you think of Venom, most people, you're thinking of Eddie Brock. This just huge dude, journalist, right? Who
huge dude, just like Topher Grace.
Well, okay.
Once again, Spider-Man 3.
Among many gripes with Spider-Man 3. So yeah, Eddie Brock is massive. That's why typically when you see Venom,
yeah, he's
stacked, like Tom Hardy stacked.
Yeah.
Now, once again, you've had multiple, right? So after Eddie Brock, I think there were actually a few more, right?
Okay.
But another big one is Matt Gargan. So for people who know who Matt Gargan is, that is the Scorpion.
Okay.
Another traditional Spider-Man villain. So then it kind of proceeds to, if you remember, this is actually kind of interesting, Flash Thompson.
Yeah.
So, Peter Parker's high school bully who became his friend post-high school. And then,
or the guy that was on the trivia team with him in Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah, that was, that was an interesting perspective on the character.
A creative take on the character. Okay, so he's been Venom?
Yes, he's been Venom. He was so inspired by Spider-Man that he joined the U.S. military, and then while on deployment got his legs blown off in a IED accident while trying to defend his allies. So that being said, he was offered a second opportunity by the US government to become a super soldier with the help of the Venom symbiote.
Interesting.
I know.
And who's currently Venom in the comics?
This is where it gets kind of more interesting, actually. Eddie Brock is actually Venom again. It's kind of an on-off relationship between the two of them.
All right, next question. What is Venom's origin?
All right, so Spider-Man 3 was actually a little bit more faithful in that this alien symbiote gets attached to Peter Parker, the original Spider-Man, right? And then it kind of starts to take him over, become more aggressive, and he notices that it's doing this. That being said, we have this really iconic scene, right, of Spider-Man trying to tear this thing off of himself. And at that same time, right, we have Eddie Brock in this church, like kind of praying for vengeance, praying for just any type of absolution, consolation, what have you. And this symbiote falls onto him and becomes attached to him.
Okay.
Now, part of this that's interesting is the fact that the symbiote by nature is parasitic. So it's kind of eat away at his host.
Okay.
But Eddie Brock actually had cancer. So it would eat away at his cancerous cells, his tumors, while maintaining him. And to combat his cancer, Eddie Brock would weightlift. So that's why he's so massive.
Okay.
Well, the symbiote felt betrayed, right? And because of other events, so did Eddie Brock. He was mad at Spider-Man, Peter Parker, so was the symbiote. So they pretty much teamed up and had this vendetta-fueled hate mission against making Peter Parker, Spider-Man's life, just living heck. I mean, really and truly, all of these Venom hosts have really interesting backstories, but I suppose we're just going to stick with Eddie Brock today.
With that in mind, who is he affiliated with?
Oh, okay. That's kind of interesting because Venom has this weird kind of on and off history of being affiliated with a bunch of different characters in the Marvel universe, and the symbiote will have children and things. It gets a little crazy, and
weird.
I think they might touch on that in the plot of this movie.
Okay.
However, an obvious mainstay is going to be Spider-Man.
Yep.
I think pretty much any time the symbiote comes into a storyline, something somewhere has to do with Spider-Man. That being said, there's also been another couple key ones. Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, has a history with this thing as well. He actually is the one who recruits Matt Gargan, the Scorpion, and passes it off to him.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's actually funny, Matt Gargan joins the Thunderbolts, which is Marvel's pretty much version of the Suicide Squad.
Okay.
But then you go into Flash Thompson, right? And once again, Peter's high school bully turned friend, huge Spider-Man fan, and pretty much gets this thing handed off to him by the US military to be a super soldier. Then that's actually interesting because he segues into the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Excellent.
Yeah, so it's interesting. He eventually joins these, Guardians of the Galaxy and goes on.
Venom joins the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Flash Thompson Venom joins the Guardians of the Galaxy, is going on fun space adventures for a little bit.
Excellent.
And this is where it starts getting real dense and comic booky. Is the Venom actually has connections with Thor.
Excellent.
Well, maybe not the traditional Venom symbiote, right? But at one point during the Jason Aaron run, Thor actually comes into contact with this kind of symbiote sword.
Okay.
And we actually don't find out about this till years later in a recent and current Venom arc. And then Thor gets to wield this sword, and I mean, he's just ultra powerful. It's called All Black, the Necro Sword. It's pretty fantastic.
As a bit of an offshoot, who is Carnage?
Okay, so Venom has a lot of offspring. It gets really hard to keep track of, but one of the mainstays is Carnage, this red symbiote, right, that shoots off from Venom and is even more homicidal and psychopathic than Venom is. It bonds with this host, right, Cletus Cassidy, who is this death row inmate murderer who then joins with an ultra powerful alien. And it's interesting because his powers differ a little bit from Venom because he can actually form bladed weapons and actually throw them.
What are Venom's powers aside from our Venom sword?
All right, so you're gonna have a lot of Spider-Man-based powers, right? You got the web, you've got the super strength, wall crawling, because, right, the Venom symbiote adopted a lot of those powers from its time with Peter Parker. However, an interesting one that not a lot of people realize is Venom, because of his time with Spider-Man, can cancel out his spider sense. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So Spider-Man pretty much does not know when this thing is coming, and that was part of why it was such a threat in his life. Now, this also gets interesting because the Venom symbiote is, besides webbing, right? He's able to do all these tentacles, like you kind of see him like lash out at people in the trailer, so that can also be really interesting.
You see him kind of explode into different shapes and stuff, and the head kind of comes out and talks to him. Is that in the comics?
Yes, actually, and that also is interesting, right? Because when Peter Parker had this suit, once again, it was his costume. It could go under his clothes. You also see that with Tom Hardy in the movie. Is this thing can camouflage, it can change its appearance, it can even transform into different shapes. I mean, we've just got this ultra powerful alien suit thing.
So then the important question, what are his weaknesses?
Oh, yeah. So Spider-Man 3, right? We see this thing does not like loud noises.
No.
That's why the church tower scene is so iconic. Peter Parker doesn't connect at first that this thing doesn't like loud noises. So that's kind of a mainstay. However, not a lot of people realize that this thing also doesn't like heat. So if you've got intense enough fire or heat, you can really mess this thing up. So that's honestly gonna be your best bet, right, is sound and fire.
And with that in mind, what is the definitive story arcs in the comic books? What should they check out if they want to dig in deeper?
All right, and once again, it's gonna bounce around from character to character, right? So I'll try to go over just the Eddie Brock storylines. A fantastic one is going to be Venom Lethal Protector. And this one kind of is on and off about him being an anti-hero, right? Him kind of haunting and stalking Peter Parker, but him also trying to be a vigilante-esque character, but maybe doing it a little more violently. And honestly, another big guy, right, is gonna be the Todd McFarlane runs. And those are actually from the 80s, right? But this is the guy who created Spawn. And you kind of actually see a lot of that influence and crossover in some of Venom's abilities and his kind of on-off anti-heroism. And then, of course, you've actually got a current run by this author, Donny Cates, who's a Texas native.
Excellent!
And yeah, that one's really interesting and goes into this more cosmic side of who and what Venom is as an alien.
And our final question, how excited are you for the movie?
Honestly, I grew up with Venom. I'm a huge Venom fan. I'm gonna pay money to see this thing, right? But I'm honestly pretty excited to see it. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, you're actually going to see it for free because I'm taking you to the press screening. I'm more mixed on this one. The trailers have me both excited and scared at the same time. You can see our full thoughts on it at that video right over there, our level of expectation, or check out that video right underneath it with my absolute best Spider-Man content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.